G'day folks, and welcome to Great Chesterford Junction Model Railway. What we're looking at in this particular episode is close coupling coaches, and I know there are proprietary products out there that allow you to do this, but I do have some issues, not so much with those products, but with the actual coaches that you're trying to attach them to, and I'll explain it by going into the train room and showing you what I mean. Now this rake of coaches here is all old mainline. All these here are all old mainline, so there should be a bit of consistency there, except for that last coach at the end, which is a Lima baggage coach. Now if we check the spacing between the buffers on these coaches with a pair of calipers, it's coming up at 7mm. So that's between mainline coaches. Now if we check it between the Lima coach and the mainline, it comes out to 8mm. Now what we have here is some relatively new Bachmann coaches. So you would think that the spacing between the buffers issue might be a bit better than it would be on 20 and 30-year-old coaches. However, when I check it with the caliper, it's showing that when it's pulling, it's actually over 10, almost 11mm. Granted, there's some sort of springing mechanism in there that draws them closer, but under load they would spread out to that 10mm. Yeah, and as close as you can get, if they're not moving, it comes down considerably, but if they're not moving, it's down to 8mm. So, yeah, interesting. So I thought, well, there must be a way to set up the coaches with some sort of close coupling arrangement so that you can guarantee the distance between the buffers each time, regardless of the age of the stock or the brand of the stock, and so you can. There must be a way to achieve this sort of simple, effective, cheap coupling. So what I did was got to work on it, and I've come up with a very simple solution, I feel. Yes, it can be set up on any coach to give you an accurate spacing each time. Now the spacing that I've come up with for my railway is 4mm, and the reason I've come up with that is because on a couple of hidden areas I've got quite tight radius curves of 18 inches, and so even though on the scenic side of my layout the curves are quite generous, the coaches have to function through the whole railway. So I made a rod for my back there. If I could go back and do it again, I would probably make larger radius curves in those areas. However, we have what we have. It is what it is. So the coaches have to deal with 18-inch radius curve in some instances. So that's why I've set my spacing to 4mm, which is still better, far better than what you get on a proprietary tension lock coupling, whatever the brand. So let's go and have a look at how we do it. Now what we have here is a coach that's already been converted. It's an old mainline coach, and what's happened here is the mounting for the tension lock coupling, which is like, it's like a square sort of or rectangular plate that fits on the end of the bogey here, that has been removed, and there's a hole drilled through the end of the bogey frame here, which allows this pin to pass through. The pin is set at a set distance using a gauge, and we'll show you that later, and there's a magnet on the end of this, and it's also secured here at the end, so this can't move. So it's a very simple coupling, and it has a bit of play in it like that, which is quite necessary to get it around the tight corners. If you had a rigid coupling here, when the coaches go around the corner, they would be trying to pull each other's bogies off the curve. So that's why there's play in it. Now one thing to keep in mind with this system is that so that the magnets will attract to the next coach. They are a north-south polarity. You've got an A end and a B end, a north end, a south end, whatever. So the coaches have to be set up in rakes all the same way. If you rotate this coach within the rake, it won't connect to its partner because the magnets will be trying to repel each other. Now, that might be an issue for some people. For me, I usually set up a rake, in my case 5 coaches, and that's it. So it just depends on how you want to operate. However, as you can see, it's a fairly low profile, and it does work really well. So I'll get on and show you what we need to actually make one of these. Right, the drawbar is actually made from one of these sewing pins. Now you can get a disc, or actually 2 discs of these, I think it is, actually from $2 shop for $2. So there's quite a few pins in there, and so that's a good, easy, cheap, simple solution. Oh, and by the way, these are about 37 millimeters long. The other thing we need is neodymium magnets, and these are the same magnets that I use on my 3-link couplings on my wagons, and these are 3mm by 1.5mm thick, and they're very strong, very powerful, so the rakes won't come apart once these are face to face and connected. And here we have we're going to use this wire insulation. This is a bit of speaker wire, and the idea with the insulation is that once you drill a hole into the end of the bogey frame, it's got to be larger than the pin so that the pin can move freely about in there. And this insulation has to slide easily over the pin, but has to have a large enough diameter so it won't pass through the hole in the bogey frame. Now this item here, folks, is critical to the build. It's called 5-second fix, and it's like a liquid welding compound. There's a compound in here that you can use as a glue, I suppose, and then when you're ready to have it set, you just turn on the ultraviolet light, and 5-10 seconds it's set hard. Now on this build, I'm using this to secure the insulation on the pin to keep it in the place where I want to keep it. So that's critical. And this stuff is only about $4.50 to $5 for a setup like this, and it lasts a long time, especially if you're using small bits like I am in this application. So I think you'll find it easily online. Just have a look around, and it's good stuff. To set up the coupling correctly on each coach, I've made myself a little jig here. Now this is just a bit of timber with a right angle bracket screwed to it. That's actually a converted shelf support, so there's just a screw through there, and we've got these 2 little pieces of pink timber which actually acts as a buffer stop, and then we've got this angle bracket in the middle here. Now what happens is that is set back 2 millimeters further than the ends of these buffers here. So when the buffers on the coach come up and touch these buffers, if the magnet on the coupling is touching this or clamped to it, you've got it set at 2 millimeters. And of course, if it's 2 millimeters out on one coach, when you bring up the next coach to it, which is 2 millimeters as well, you've got a 4 millimeter gap between the coaches. So that's just a simple thing, and that's adjustable. So if you have a much larger radius on your layout, you could indeed set that gap to say 1 millimeter, which gives you a 2 millimeter gap between coaches, or you could bring it down even finer if you can do it. It'd be tricky, but yeah. On the other hand, if it's a bit of a pain, you can take it further out that way. I don't see why you would do that, but anyway. So that's all that is, a simple jig, and I'll show you how that works when we're setting up the coach. Now this is the standard old mainline coach that we're going to work on. I've already done a rake of Great Western coaches, and I'll show you how this will fit in to those. Just so you can see an example of it. I've just started doing my maroon and custards, so or maroon and cream I should say. So what we'll do is we'll remove the standard tension lock coupling, and we've got this bogey here that we need to work on. So what I usually do is I remove the bogey, just pops out, and what we want to do is remove this plate here. This is going to take the magnetic coupling, so we need to remove that. And the way I've been doing it is I mount this plate into the vise, and then I've got a little saw and I'll just cut across there. So I'll get that done, and then we'll come back and have a look at the bogey again. So here it is. I've cut the rectangular plate off, and then I've cleaned it up a bit with a file. So now we've got a bogey that presents pretty much the same at either end. Yeah. So what's missing on this end is these little lugs that you can see protruding here slightly. It's not a big deal, barely makes any difference to the appearance of it, but you could use either end now to mount the bogey, and you'll notice that it's got these little lugs here. They're to stop the bogey spinning outside the range of the coach. So if you want to, you can remove those. It doesn't really make much difference if you remove them, but if you leave them on, it sort of determines which way the bogey will sit on the coach itself. And at this stage, you'll notice that I've got the wheel sets out too. This is also a good opportunity to clean wheel sets, especially on plastic wheels. Over the years, they pick up gunk, and it sort of forms a tread on the wheel, and could even sort of give you sort of lumpy running. So this is a good opportunity to give the wheels a bit of a clean as well. Okay, right, we've got two sets of wheels that are nice and clean now. They had a bit of a tread on them. As I say, the tread can sort of go on unevenly and create sort of lumpy running. So it's good to get that done. I've also dusted out the bogey itself, so it's all nice and clean and ready to go. So the next thing we need to do is I've got a pin vise, and I'm going to drill a hole in the middle end of the bogey, and this will be the hole that allows the pin to pass through. Now, it depends on what size pins you've got and all that sort of thing that you're going to use. I don't know if they vary throughout the world, but this has to be a larger diameter than the pin itself, so you get that free movement in the pin. However, the hole has to be a smaller diameter than the insulation that you're putting on there, so the insulation can't pass through the hole. So I'll drill myself a little hole here, and then we'll come back. So that's how it should be, folks. When the drill bit is passed through, it's pretty much up just under the top of the bogey there. So yeah, we're just about ready to go on that one. Now you can see when I put a pin in there, you've got that range of movement. That's the sort of movement we want. Right, now we have to fit the wheels back in the bogey and put the bogey back on the coach so we can set it up for the right distance. So the bogey's back on now. Wheels are moving quite freely, so that's good. Now, to set up this pin properly to receive a magnet on the end of it, what we're going to have to do is file the top of it flat. So the way I do that is I put it in the vise so it's held securely with just the ball sticking out there, and then I'd take a file and go across the top of the pin until I get a flat surface, and the diameter of the surface will be slightly larger than the magnet, which is 3 millimeters. So now the pin looks like that. It's had its head filed flat, and this is a good surface to super glue the magnet to, because you've got a little bit of the end of the pin there which the magnet will attach to, plus with the super glue added. It's a very, very strong bond. Now, because we're having magnets of different polarities at each end of the coach, I'm using this jig that I used to make my 3-link couplings, and this has a magnet set in there. You can barely see it now, it's so dirty now, but if I put a magnet on each side of that, I've got a north-south set up, and then I can use that to hold the magnets and then put the pins onto them, and we can put that aside until it dries and work on the other end of the coach. Now I like to put a little drop of super glue on a bit of plastic or whatever I've got hanging around. It saves sort of getting too much onto the parts, and I can then take the end of the pin, dip it in the super glue and put it on the magnet. It finds that quite easily, and just make sure it's reasonably centered. That's okay. And then we'll do the other one, same method, and so we will have an A and a B pin, or a north and a south pin if you like. So they're ready to go. That's one end, and the other end done. In the meantime, I'll prepare this other bogey, which means, taking the coupling off, taking the rectangular plate off, pulling the wheels out, clean up the wheels, and drill a hole in the end, and then we'll be ready to start working on the pins. Now here I've stripped some wire insulation off, and we've got 2 pieces here at 10mm and 2 pieces here at 5mm each. So they go on the outside of the bogey, and these 2 go on the inside of the bogey. Now what you need is an area of straight track on your layout, or either that or you can make up a piece of straight track on a piece of wood if you want to. But a piece of straight track is what you need. And the jig sits over the track like so, and you want it square to the track so that when the coach comes up and hits the buffers, it's square. So you can hold it easily enough. Now you take one of the pins that you prepared, one of those, and then we'll add that to the right angle bracket on the jig, roughly at bogey height. And then we take one of the 10mm pieces of insulation and slide that onto the pin. Now it's firmish on the pin, but it slides easily enough, so I've only just put it on there, just a little way onto the pin. So now we take the jig to the track, we insert the pin into the hole in the bogey, I'll have to lift it up to do it. Got it. What we do is push the coach up to the jig. So we just do that, and as we're doing that, it's sliding the insulation along on the pin. Now we withdraw the coach, and we have the pin in the correct position. We now need to use our 5-second fix and add some of the resin between the end of the insulation and the pin head. Put it all around, completely cover the pin shaft. Get a good coverage on there. This is to stop the pin head compressing back into the bogey when the coaches are pushing. That should be plenty on there. Now we'll use our ultraviolet light to set the resin. That's good, I think. Yep. So we'll just slowly rotate it, and that will set the resin. We now bring our coach back to the bench, and it's usually easier to do the next step with the bogey off, and also remove the wheel set nearest the near the coupling. This gives you a bit more room to play with. We now take one of the 5mm pieces of insulation and slide that over the pin and down behind the back of the bogey. Then we get some of the 5-second fix. Once again, just pulled it out slightly so it's a bit freer moving. Now we put some 5-second fix onto the pin behind that little 5mm piece, and we'll just rotate it a bit, put some more on. And now we will turn the ultraviolet light on and help that set. Just turn it a bit, do the other side. Rotate it a little bit more. Just make sure the light gets through to every side of it. And what that's doing is stopping that pin from pulling out through the bogey once this is set. And it's actually quite strong. I've tried to pull them out by hand, and in the end I didn't want to break the bogey frame, so I had to scrape this off with a knife to remove that little piece of insulation. That'll do. And then just trim off any excess pin. And we refit the wheels. And we're done. I've just been using a permanent marker to colour up the couplings. I mean, you could paint them, you could do whatever you like. Doesn't take much, and once they're all sort of coloured up, they look pretty good, I think. Yeah, so that's quite a simple little job to do. And you can even colour in the face of the magnet as well if you want to. It won't really affect it in any way. It's such a thin coating that it won't really matter. Yeah, here's a comparison between the two couplings. Visually I think it's an improvement, and now I'll show you how this will fit into a train. Right, this is my Great Western set that I've already converted. All these 5 wagons are converted over. So what we have at the rear here is Old Hornby, that's mainline, and this is Lima, and this is mainline again. And you can see that this is how they're coupled permanently, and it's the same wherever you go. And these, at that distance, which is 4mm, will travel around 18-inch radius curves. So what we'll do now is add this new coach into that set. Right, so we'll add it here, for example. Now all we have to do is just separate these coaches. The magnets let go. And now remember I said we've got north-south polarity, so I'm not sure which is which at this stage, so we might be lucky and this might be the right way around. Okay, No, that's wrong. It's this way. Okay, so that couples up, and we'll just bring in the other two, and that's coupled up. Now, this begs the next question. How are the front and rear coaches connected to a loco? Well, I'm glad you asked that. I have a tension lock fitted on the front carriage, on one end of it, and I have the magnetic coupling on the other end, and I do the same for the brake coach. Now you might notice this tension lock looks a little bit different. This is what I call a dumbbell coupling, because what I've done here is I've added a 1mm thick by 3mm diameter neodymium magnet onto the bottom there. I've used the 5-second fix to fix it on there. What I've done is put it in the vise and filed off 1mm off the dropper on the tension lock, which gave me a flat base on the tension lock, and then I've added the magnet onto the bottom. And this is what uncouples the dumbbell tension lock. It's a little neodymium bar magnet. It's 15 mils wide or long by 3 mils wide that way, and 2 mils thick, and it's real neat. It just fits in between the sleepers, so one of those is super glued into the track in between the sleepers at the position where I want to uncouple, and it's set up in such a way that the magnets will repel. So polarity is very important when you're fitting the magnet to the dropper on the tension lock. You've got to have a little jig, like my black jig that I use all the time, to determine what polarity is the right way around. So everything has to be set up properly. But once the small tension lock passes over the magnet in the track, it will be repelled and therefore force the tension lock into the up position. So I can show you a demo of that. So the first thing we'll do is we'll couple up a train. So you can see that it's coupled. Now I've got a marked position on the side of the track so I know where the uncoupling point is. You can see that the magnet is actually there. So we'll do it again. We'll now run this train around a bit so you can see how it performs on curves, etc. I've taken some of my scenery off over here so that we can get a better view of it coming through. Now we'll run it backwards through some tricky point formations here. No problem at all. Now, how much can it pull, I hear you say? Well, I don't know really. The locomotives usually give up before the coupling does, so I've got to couple of class 33s here, pulling. Now the main load is on this second coach with the coupling. So we've got, after that we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 coaches. I think that's alright. As I say, the locomotives will give up before the couplings do. So to summarise, folks, this coach setup is an AB setup. It's north-south, so you can't rotate the coaches, but as I say, I've built it for myself, and my rakes usually stay as they are. If it's a rake of 5, it stays as a rake of 5, so all that matters is the connections at the ends then, so that I can couple and uncouple easily. And so I'm using a combined system. I'm using the dumbbell tension locks on the fronts and backs of the coaches, and I'm removing the hook from the tension locks on the locomotives. So if you try and put 2 of these dumbbell tension locks together, the magnets attract each other. So it only works if it's on one coupling, and with the opposite coupling with the hook removed. So it might be good for shunting layout actually, if your stocks always going the same way. Anyway, that's just something to think about. Excuse me, but it's fairly easy to do. Excuse me. Oh, we'll try that again. And yes, so some of the coaches you could actually set it up so that it's reversible. Those Bachmans I showed you, the newish Bachmans, the couplings that are on there at the moment can be removed, and they're set into a groove in the bogey frame. So if you remove those and just reverse the bogey frame on the coach itself, so that the original coupling position faces towards the inboard or the centre of the coach, that would be reversible. Not everything is reversible. These main lines, once that's done, that's done. I suppose if I needed to, I could always add a tension lock back on there if I needed to. I'd just have to put out some sort of piece of plastic as a drawbar to attach to. Yeah, so it's really, as I said, set up for my railway with the locomotives with the tension locks on them. On most of them, on the buffer beam just above the tension locks, I'll have a magnet to deal with my 3-link couplings, the chains and the magnets and all that sort of thing. So I think I've pretty much nailed the system for myself. But if anyone out there gets anything out of it, well, good luck to you. And it's certainly a very economical system for the coaches. As I said, the magnets are 14 cents each, and I bought those from a magnet supplier, so they're probably a bit dearer from a magnet supplier. So that's 28 cents for this coach, plus the pins and the insulation. So we can only count the pins. So we'd be lucky to get to 40 cents, folks, actually, to do one coach. So not a bad deal economically. So and they look good. I mean, you know, it looks better when they're closer coupled, and these couplings are fairly low profile, not as heavy as some of the commercial ones. So that's about it, and hope you found something good in this, and I'll leave it with you, and I'll see you next time. Cheers, Gourmet.